Happy New Year. It is Fantasy and Frames Wednesday. Welcome to Dynasty 365 here on the Fantasy and Frames Network. I am your host, Tyler Heil, filling in for Stacey Perez, who is listed as out with an illness for this week. Joined tonight by the Dynasty Deviant himself, Chris Burns. And this week we are talking about top free agent wide receivers and to see what that means for Dynasty. Let's do it. All right, everyone. As always, don't forget to drop your comments and questions into the chat. If you have trade questions, throw those in too. Whatever you are looking for. But first, Chris, how you doing, man? It's been a while.
It has been a while, and Happy New Year. Let me be probably one of the last people to tell you that. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Hope that you had a great holiday season and a great kickoff to the year. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling almost refreshed. Still getting used to getting back to work, but I mean, I'm ready. Like 2024 is going to be great. Let's do it.
Yes, I am very happy to say goodbye to 2023 and bring in some new in 2024. It was a year full of highs and very low lows, but we are moving on, and I am very ready for this Dynasty offseason. I was like getting hyped listening to podcasts today, just talking about the NFL. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait for this draft season. Are you as excited as I am?
I am excited. Like, I really feel that, I mean, so much stuff is going to be happening. I think that this is going to be probably one of the best free agency classes that we have seen in a long time in the NFL. So it's going to be a lot of movers and shakers. Like this rookie class, like as I'm late to the party. I'm just getting started really knowing some of these guys, but I'm liking what I'm seeing someday. I think it's going to be some surprises, like more quarterbacks to the mix. I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Oh, yeah. This is a perfect time for this class. You got a lot of teams with uncertainty at quarterback. You got a lot of teams that need some wide receiver help, and that is exactly what this draft class is going to provide. But we will get into that more in the coming months on Dynasty 365 as we break down all of these players by positions. You will find film breakdowns on our YouTube channel. You'll find player profiles on our website that go along with video profiles on YouTube. So please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and whatever other social media you might have. So before we get into talking about the offseason and free agents and drafts, let's talk about what happened last week. So as always, we hit our favorite part of the prior week, and I guess we can do favorite part of either week 16 or week 17. And if you have one, give me a New Year's resolution for fantasy football, Chris.
Okay. So my favorite part of like the past couple weeks, it was just the holiday season, being around family and friends and just enjoying it. But my absolute favorite is watching my nieces, my nephew, and my goddaughters tearing open those like wrapping paper, opening those presents, and just being so happy about a toy like that's this big. Like just the wide-eyed amazement and wonder of children just warms my heart, and that was absolutely my favorite part. Football was great. Watching the Dolphins clinch a playoff spot, beating the Cowboys. We're not going to talk about them like losing the number 1 seed against Baltimore because that was hurtful. Yes, in epic fashion. Wow. So a New Year's resolution for fantasy football. Is that the correct use of the word? I resolve. There you go. Thank you. I resolve to avoid terrible offenses. Mediocre players on terrible offenses. I'm not gonna, be all in. If they fall to me at a appropriate place, then yeah. But I'm not seeking out like betas on bad offenses.
All right, I like it. I do not blame you one bit for that. I think you know what my favorite part of week 16 and week 17 was, and it was watching the Browns roll to clinching the number 5 seed in the AFC. They would have had a chance at the number 1 seed if the Dolphins could have done something about it, but we know how that went. So I will settle for the 5 seed, and I will settle for what is likely going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, it's possible.
Yeah.
And Christmas-wise, it was a lot of fun, man. We were at my wife's dad's house. We had 5 couples. So she has 1 sister and 3 step-siblings, all of whom are married, I forgot her stepbrother. He's not married. Everyone else is married. Everyone else has kids. We had a total of 20 people in this house.
Oh, wow.
8 of them were below 8 years old.
That's awesome.
So it was absolute insanity. There was wrapping paper and gifts everywhere, all kinds of screaming, but it was a good time.
I love it. That's what it's all about, man. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. And my New Year's resolution for fantasy football, which I haven't given a ton of thought to, but I resolve to ensure I go back and review my process for evaluating rookies last year and see where I hit, because I certainly hit on some players, and see where I missed, because I certainly missed on some players. So I'm going to try to get better at evaluating players this year. I'm going to try to evaluate the quarterback position, even though it's a near impossible task, but we're going to do it, and we're going to talk about it. So that being said, let's get into our free agent wide receivers. We have 6 guys that we are going to talk about today. We're going to mention some other names, which they might have some effect on the fantasy offseason. All said, they might be some weekly fill-ins, but there are 6 guys who could absolutely have some real impact on your fantasy roster. And I am going to go ahead and start with Buffalo Bills wide receiver Gabriel Davis. Gabe Davis is 6'2", 216 pounds, came out of the University of Central Florida. He was drafted in the 2020 draft. That's where it puts him, right? Yeah, he ran a 4.54 40 time, 35-inch vert, 10'4", 10'4" broad, and a 7.08 3-cone. Most of that respectable stuff. Good athlete. Can't say much about that. All those numbers are good for being 6'2", 216. And that's where my good stuff to say about Gabe Davis ends. He's been semi-productive in fantasy football for the past couple of years. I believe that is more of a product of just being on a Josh Allen offense. I tried extremely hard to find some stats that said, hey, Gabe Davis is better than you think. He's been performing well. He does this well. The best I can find is that his yards per reception mark is 11th in the league at 16.6. However, his ADOT is 12th in the league at 14.9. So none of that is really very special. He doesn't break tackles. He's 160th in receptions per broken tackle. So essentially, he has to catch 45 balls to break 1 tackle. Not good. Drop rate, 3.8% drop rate. That's 85th in the NFL. And again, all these numbers that I'm referencing in stats have removed anyone that has less than 30 targets on the year. So it's trying to clean that number up a bit. So 3.8% drop rate. There's just nothing exceptional about Gabe Davis. He'd be a nice wide receiver 3 to have on your roster. Literally in the NFL, he'd be a nice wide receiver 3 on your roster. He has the field stretching ability. Gabe Davis is and will remain to be likely a good guy on your roster to have in best ball, because he does have that field stretching ability. As an every week starter, I don't love it. He's been forced into the wide receiver 2 role on the Bills, as the Bills have not. Again, I want to say they haven't done well drafting wide receivers, but like I actually really like Khalil Shakir. I don't know why they're not getting him the ball more. Dalton Kincaid, I love him. I don't understand why Dawson Knox is continuing to take snaps and take targets from him. The Bills' offense is just absolutely making my head spin. It was being run poorly with Ken Dorsey. It's being run poorly under whoever the hell's doing it now. It's only making do because Josh Allen is a freaking alien. So that being said, I would suspect the Bills to move on from Gabe Davis because of all the things I said. I had no interest in giving Gabe Davis the Jacoby Myers contract, 3 years, $11 million per year. No, thank you. I will go into this draft, which is loaded with wide receiver talent, or I will grab some of these other receivers in this free agent class that are going to be much cheaper and good for my NFL team. So I don't love Gabe Davis in real football. I don't love Gabe Davis in fantasy football. I would consider him a sell. And if I could get a early second rounder for Gabe Davis, I would be crow hopping him that opposing manager. So I don't know how you feel about him, Chris, but I don't love him.
Pretty much the same. For some reason, he is one of those like fantasy Twitter darlings. Like they've always loved Gabe Davis and they always like lift him up like he is someone that is going to carry you to numerous championships. And Gabe Davis is Gabe Davis. He's the new Wayne Corbett. Wayne Corbett. I can't talk.
Yes.
The flashlight, you know? So, yeah, I agree with you a lot on everything you said. But
I'll tell you what, Gabe Davis, saying that over and over again, it just doesn't roll off the tongue well. It makes everything else harder to say.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was Gabe Davis made me unable to say Wayne Corbett.
Yes, that was his fault. So the next guy we're going to talk about, Chris, is Marquise Hollywood Brown. Tell me a little bit about him.
All right. Yeah. So Marquise Hollywood Brown. Actually, so you see, shout out to Jay Money for letting us know that it was Joe Brady who is, taking over the mantle for Dorsey over there in Buffalo. So that explains a lot. And hello to Albert. Appreciate you tuning in and watching us. And Tyler, you always do great work. And I agree that I have to do better. So, cheers to that. Thanks, Rhett, for keeping me accountable. But let's go ahead and we'll get into Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, he is a fifth-year wide receiver coming, lost my spot. Fifth-year wide receiver, currently on IR for the Cardinals. He was drafted, he was a number 25 overall pick in 2019 by the Ravens, which is kind of interesting that the Ravens spent a first-round pick on him. In 2024, he'll be an unrestricted free agent in his age 27 season. And since Brown was drafted back in 2019, he's kind of had what you would call a roller coaster type of career. Like being drafted by the Ravens, a team that at that time just wanted to run the ball. And then after they run the ball, they'd run the ball. And then after they ran the ball, then they're going to, guess what, run the ball. So it wasn't really like that Greg Roman offense where they're going to open it up and throw the ball downfield a lot. So a lot of people believe that he was just in the wrong system, because Brown, like his little guy, he's a speed demon, that he stretches the field and he was used frequently, like in that play action part of the game, which they did have success doing. Brown's best season with the Ravens, it came in 2021. It was his best season by far, posting 91 receptions for 1,008 yards and 6 touchdowns. And after that season, like Brown realized that he just really didn't like the system that he was in. He requested to be traded. And in 2022, the Ravens did trade him to the Arizona Cardinals. They gave up Brown and a third for Arizona's first, which Baltimore then turned around and traded. So going to Arizona under Cliff Kingsbury's air raid system, a lot of people were expecting that maybe Brown could get loose downfield and actually do some things. Unfortunately, he didn't do much. Now, granted, he was injured, a large portion of the season. And then there was a lot of inner turmoil between coach and Kyler Murray wanting to play Call of Duty, ownership, the GMs, everything. There was just a lot going on, and it just never really materialized. Um, coming into this season, there was an expectation that maybe Brown could do something, but that expectation was still capped by the fact that you knew Kyler was going to be out for a large portion of the season. And this Arizona team was not expected to be good at all. They actually, have performed better than anyone thought they would starting off this season. So Josh Dobbs and then the other backups and everything. So it was just a weird season. But anyway, so far this season, he does have 51 catches for 574 yards and 4 touchdowns. And he's been nicked up a lot in and out of the lineup. And it's just one of those things. So one could say for his career, he's just been in bad situations and hasn't really had the opportunity to shine. I don't know. I feel that the wide receiver room in Arizona this year was a place where he probably should have did more than what he has. So just not really sure. But don't expect the Cardinals to keep him. So I think he's going to, hit the free agents market. And I think he'll find a home somewhere just because the speed is supreme in today's NFL. Hopefully, he goes to an offense that's already established where they can actually use a Z wide receiver, not the big X on the outside, but they can actually move in the formation, create mismatches, and then use that speed to get open and do something. And hopefully it's a team where he's not expected to be the primary option because he is not a true alpha. He's not an alpha for an NFL team. He shouldn't be an alpha for your fantasy team either. So there's a lot of belief in the talent, but the production just hasn't followed. And right now, Dynasty League football, they have Marquise Brown valued as somewhere around a 2nd-round pick. And honestly, I'm not sure I would pay it. I'm a seller when it comes to Brown, and I'm willing to miss out if he goes to another place and he just happens to pop off. I hope that he goes somewhere established and he revitalizes his career and he does all these great things. I really wish the best for him. I just don't think it'll happen. I just can't shake that thought process that, that one-trick pony typecast that he is, that he's just going to stretch the field and hopefully hold on to the ball, which is not always guaranteed when we're talking about Brown. So I don't know how you feel about him. I don't know if I like him more than Gabe Davis. I kind of feel like, but that's where I am.
I like him more than Gabe Davis. I think everything you said is correct. He's a one-trick pony. He's got the field stretching ability, but you know what? That trick's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
If put in the right situation. I think he has never been in a good situation. He's been on Greg Roman offenses his whole career. He's been on just a weird Cardinals team last year. That was just odd. It was a mess. Has he played any games with Kyler this year?
He's played a couple
of that.
He's played a couple where he should have been in smash spots and it just didn't work out. And it's just, the team is just so, you really can't fully assess how well he's done this season just because of the craziness that's been the Arizona Cardinals, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair. And I hope he ends up in a place where he's a solid wide receiver too. The one that jumped out at me, actually, as I'm looking for potential landing spots for him, the New York Jets.
Okay.
If Aaron Rodgers can actually come back and be healthy, that team is in dire need of a second wide receiver. They don't have anyone.
Okay.
They paid Alan Lazard $11 million a year to be inactive on game days. Randall Cobb is just there for moral support.
This is true.
I mean, Garrett Wilson rocks. Garrett Wilson is freaking awesome. If you put someone like Marquise Brown on that team, I would be very excited about it.
That would be something to be excited about. But Xavier Gibson has kind of stepped into that role or whatever, where he's showing that he might have a little bit of juice. I really don't know what to expect because the quarterback play has been so bad. But I don't know if they'd be willing to do that with him, unless Aaron Rodgers tells them to, because he is the,
the GM.
Yeah.
He is the czar of New York Jets football.
There it is. The czar of New York Jets football. So if he's like, yeah, we want Marquise, they'll make it happen.
Also, did you just say Xavier Gibson could take over that number 2 role?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. We're going to have to dig into that. We don't have enough time for that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next guy, a Mr. Calvin Ridley. So Calvin Ridley is currently the wide receiver 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He finished the fantasy season as the wide receiver 24 overall. He was also the wide receiver 31 in points per game. And with everything else involving that Jaguars offense, he has been a disappointment this year. It's been a sincere letdown. I had very high hopes for where their screens mirrored for my Jags offense. I got Trevor Lawrence hanging out back here. So I am still hoping that they can pull off this playoff spot, even if it's them playing the Browns. I mean, I know who I'm cheering for regardless. But Calvin Ridley's another guy where I was trying to find stats to make him look good. I was trying to say, hey, Calvin Ridley does this, and this well. He's graded well by PFF. He's not. He's 45th in PFF receiving grade. He's right behind Greg Dortch and right in front of Jacoby Myers in PFF. Wow. We've only seen him play 65 total games in a career that has spanned 6 years because of injury and suspension. He just turned 29 on December 20th. So he is not a young man in NFL years. He made his hay off of being a good route runner and just a good football player, which that is the best thing that I can still say for Calvin Ridley is he still passes the eye test to me when he's out there running routes. I just don't know if he's been on the complete same page with Trevor. Trevor's been hurt all year. It's been a weird year for the Jags offense. So I would hope that for Calvin Ridley's fantasy football production sake, that he goes back to the Jags. I don't know if they're going to want to bring him back. So he's another guy where I'm just like, I don't know about this. I do feel better about Calvin Ridley than I do Gabe Davis. The 3 guys that I'm actually talking about, I looked at them like, I can qualify them as a sell, hold, and a buy. And Calvin Ridley is going to be my hold because I don't think you're going to get anything overly valuable for him. And I think his next couple years can be a much more value return than you would get in like maybe a late second for Calvin Ridley at this point because he's flat out just not performed. So, yeah, Calvin Ridley is my hold. He is a mediocre wide receiver 24. He's had some big games with Christian Kirk out. That offense needs Christian Kirk back terribly, and he is a 29-year-old NFL wide receiver. So I don't love the value of Calvin Ridley. I don't love the idea of Calvin Ridley, but I think he can still perform if put into the right situation.
Yeah, I can see that. You should have just stopped looking after his rookie season where he scored all those touchdowns.
Well, no, he had the one 2020 was like an amazing year for him. Like he was second team All Pro that year. He was awesome in 2020, but it's 2024. Mm-hmm. Like I can't go back and look at 2024 or 2021 and 2020. And 2021 he missed most of the season anyway. Didn't play 2022. It was mediocre 2023. I cannot base an argument off of Calvin Ridley's historical production when he was 25 and now he's 29. I can't do it. I refuse to.
I got you.
So our next older wide receiver that we're going to discuss in a little bit of a different vein because he's actually performed is Mike Evans. Chris, tell me a little bit about Mr. Mike Evans.
I mean, Mr. Michael Evans. I mean, there's just a lot to. I mean, how do you not like this guy? Like, really and truly, like, how do you not like this guy? Like, if you actually like looked up his story and the stuff that he went through, and then like his path to the NFL, like I root for him. Like, I feel like you have to root for the guy. But let's dig into it a little bit. So he right now is the wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Bucks, and he is playing in his 10th season. He was drafted in 2014 as the number 7 overall pick, by the Bucks out of Texas A&M. And I believe his quarterback at A&M was Ryan Tannehill, like for a year, I think. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Before Johnny Football.
Yes, before
right?
Johnny Football.
Yeah.
Evans, he'll enter 2024 as an unrestricted free agent, and it'll be going into his age 31 season. So he's been around for a while, but for his career, what has he done? He only just posted his 10th consecutive 1,000 yard season, 10 consecutive 1,000 yard seasons. So he's down there in Tampa Bay, and the history of quarterbacks down there in Tampa Bay since he's been there. You got YOLO Jameis, you got the journeyman Fitzpatrick, you got the 27 other people who have just put in there and doing things. And going into this year, a lot of people were saying oh, this is going to be the year that it all ends for Mike Evans because Baker Mayfield is there now. And he's still doing his thing. Evans has 94 career touchdowns. That's just, he gets in the box. That's what he does. So his entire career, he's been a fantasy staple. He's been buoying fantasy rosters, especially in championship weeks. Now, I had the stat, but I lost it when my computer reset. In championship weeks, I believe in the last few years, Evans, he shows up with 2 touchdowns, if not better. He's done that 3 of the last 5 years. And I know he has taken me to a couple of titles just by his performance alone in that final week, which is awesome. Back to Baker, not expecting a whole lot, but he's had a solid season this year, 76 catches, 1,233 yards, 13 touchdowns. After Brady,
he might set a record for himself.
He might. You love what you're seeing down here. Nobody thought that after the GOAT, Tom Brady, that Baker would come in and Evans would put up these numbers, even when you have Godwin on the other side of the field. But I'm just impressed by looking at his body of work. He's getting up there in age by football player standards, but he is still producing. He is a true big-bodied X receiver that can be the possession guy if you need it. And for some reason, he's still gets down the field sometime and catches a long touchdown, every few games, whatever. He really is impressive to watch. So in free agency the past couple of years, we've seen average wideouts, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, get paid big money. And then we've seen the year where no free agent wide receiver got paid big money. But then again, Juju was the best that you had to offer. So what can you really expect? I'm not sure if anybody's really going to break the bank for Mike Evans just based off his age, but it really wouldn't surprise me if he got a decent contract just because of the potential of what he can bring. He can join any wide receiver group and make them immediately better. So just hope that he goes and he finds a key team. I'm thinking that at this point in his career that he's probably going to start ring hunting and try to go to a place where he actually has a chance to win versus chasing another payday. But I'm not exactly sure what to expect from him in 2024 because I think a lot of it is going to depend on where he lands and the role he has once he gets there. But I still believe that he has a few more years of just consistent fantasy production left in him. The question for us Dynasty players is that lemon going to be worth the squeeze? Dynasty League football right now has them valued in the range between Josh Downs, George Kittle, Christian Watson, or somewhere close to a 2025 first. And honestly, I'm taking him over Watson right now, going into 2024. I'm taking him over Kittle. That's really no question. In that 2025 first, I really feel that I can recoup that value at some point. If I'm in that championship window, Evans is definitely somebody that I would like to have on my team just because he gives me what I feel will be a steady floor in that wide receiver room, where I could actually make moves for a stronger upside in other places and not have to worry about losing too much because I know that he's going to give me a consistent floor. So like I said, if you're in contending windows, and Evans, he really could help you out a lot. If you're rebuilding at his age right now and you're not going to be contending for a championship in the next few years, then yeah, you definitely should be trying to sell him, cash in to somebody who is in that championship window, for those future building blocks that's going to help you become a contender in the future. I'm trying to think of good places where he can land, and it's really hard right now just because I know there's going to be so many changes, but I feel like a lot of teams out there could use a solid X. Do you have a good spot where you think it will fit well?
So I'm looking at it right now, and I haven't looked too closely at the AFC. First of all, I think the Bucks might try to keep him. He's been the face of that franchise for almost a decade.
Okay.
I mean, he really has. That said, I also think that they will allow him to do what he wants. If he does want to go ring hunting, which I understand your argument for that, and I think he might do it. Weirdly, I think the Packers would be a really good fit. But I just don't know about Christian Watson. I mean, I don't think they would invest in him. The Chiefs are kind of that low-hanging fruit, but I think the Chiefs need maybe someone a little younger.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have a great fit for him at this time. It's a tough one right now.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So with Mike Evans, like right now, going into 2024, you think he's in a similar situation to Nuke Hopkins in 2023, where he was like, yeah, I'm available, I want to win, and nobody really gave him like what he was looking for?
I think he's in a better spot than Nuke Hopkins.
Even
though I still think Nuke Hopkins didn't get the respect he deserved, because I think he's still productive, and he's actually been productive on a team with an offense that is just a dumpster fire. So I'm hoping he can get, maybe, I'm sure he wants a long-term deal. Mm-hmm. He probably wants a 3-year deal, 4-year deal with guarantees only through year 2, something like that, pushing $20 million a year. I hope he can get that.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks here, man. There could be a lot of good fits. There couldn't be a lot of good fits. We got to let some things shake out before we start putting 30-year-old wide receivers on teams.
For sure. Unless Aaron Rodgers has to do so.
Hey, you never know. You do what Aaron Rodgers says, damn it. So we've got 2 more, and I think these guys are kind of the cream of the crop in this class when it relates to talent and age and contract situation. So I will go first, and I will talk about Michael Pittman Jr. from the Indianapolis Colts. He just turned 26, so he's entering the prime of his career for an NFL wide receiver. I would be surprised if the Colts let him walk. And frankly, I think that's the best case scenario for him to stay in Indy. They've got Josh Downs to support him in the slot. They've got Alec Pierce, who's, he's okay on the outside. I don't think he's going to preclude them from searching for another wide receiver in the draft or in free agency. But Michael Pittman's 6'4", he's 223. I ran a 4.5, 240 coming out, 36 and a half inch vert, 10'1" broad. And the big one for me is a 6'9", 6'3" cone. So anything below 7 is really good. And when you're sub 7 and you're 6'4", 223, that's really, really good. So I like his agility. I like his short area quickness. He was drafted with the 2nd pick in the 2nd round in 2020 by the Colts. I think we have to remember that when discussing his contract situation, because the Colts just paid Jonathan Taylor, and the Colts prioritized Michael Pittman in the draft over Jonathan Taylor. They traded up for Taylor in the 2nd round and said, you know what, which one of these guys could we not live without? And they said Michael Pittman. So we've got to remember that. And it's still the same GM that drafted him. So there's some real internal equity there. Fantasy-wise, Michael Pittman's been nothing but consistently productive. This year, he finishes the wide receiver 16 overall. He was the wide receiver 19 in points per game. 2022, he was the wide receiver 23 overall, wide receiver 29 in points per game. That was a terrible situation. 2021, he was the wide receiver 15 overall, and he was the wide receiver 28 in points per game. Just saying, here's a list of the guys who have thrown him the ball the most in the past 3 years. Carson Wentz has 516 attempts. Gardner Minshew has 466. Matt Ryan has 461. Sam Ellinger has 101. Anthony Richardson has 84. Nick Foles has 42 pass attempts. And Jacob Eason has 5. So, I like Gardner. I really do. I like Anthony Richardson, but that list is rough. So in the past 3 seasons, he's only missed 3 games. He's been consistently available, which is why you kind of see that points per game rank being a little lower than his overall, because he's just consistent. Okay, maybe he's not winning you weeks, but he's consistently giving you 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 points a week, and he's buoying your team and allowing you to win some games. So he's been extremely reliable. He has a low drop percentage. He only has 3 drops on 150 targets. I mean, that puts him in a category all his own. Like, he's been insanely consistent with that. And also, where's his rank for? Okay, there it is. Sorry. He's 15th in the NFL in receptions for first down. So, and I say these things to highlight that Pittman's just been consistent. He doesn't have this incredible ADOT. He doesn't have this incredible yards per reception. He's not one of the highest graded receivers on PFF. He's not breaking tackles all over the place, but he is consistently helping that offense move down the field. And I don't know if you can find a better, more consistent wide receiver for a very, very promising young quarterback in Anthony Richardson, who is hopefully going to have the whole season next year. So that is another argument for why I would hold on to him if I were the Indianapolis Colts. Trade-wise, I would absolutely be slinging a late first for Michael Pittman right now. I have not looked at the DLF trade value, but I would assume it's somewhere close to that. If I had Michael Pittman, would I accept a late first? It depends, but I honestly, I don't think so. He's just entering his prime. He just turned 26. He's going to be paired up with a promising young quarterback in Anthony Richardson, in my opinion. So I really like Michael Pittman, and he was my buy out of these 3 receivers that I talked about. Did you happen to look up the DLF trade value?
Yeah, they have him ranked right now as an early 2024 first.
Really?
Yep. Some comps that they have around them, let's see, DK, JSN. I don't really know about those 2, but yeah. And really, just showing his ADP comparison, from September on up, this whole season, he's been trending upward, and I'm thinking that he's going to ascend. And I really think that right now is definitely the time to get him. I think from right now till draft season, his price will shoot through the roof. I really feel that once everybody starts getting excited about Richardson coming back, and then looking at everything you said about his consistency and how he's been consistent with mediocrity at the QB position. If Richardson can come in there and he stays sustainable, then yeah. I mean, look at what he was doing in the beginning of the season, him and Josh Downs both with Richardson out there. So I really feel that his value is going to shoot up. So if you are going to buy him, you probably should be getting it right now, because I can't see between now and the start of the NFL season where his value goes down, barring a major injury.
Yeah. I'm not paying a 2024 early first for him. I love Michael Pittman. I really do. I'm not giving up a shot at Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison, Roma Dunze, Brock Bowers. I'm not giving up a shot at those guys for Michael Pittman. I love Michael Pittman. Yeah.
So Brock Bowers, you'll take Brock Bowers over Michael Pittman?
Depending on the landing spot, but I really like Brock Bowers. I mean, he's special.
Yeah. I think for me, that's where the tier break for me, that's where it becomes a conversation, not knowing landing spot. Right now, what we know today, I'm taking Pittman over Bowers. And I agree with you.
Right.
Like, I mean, I can't argue like, the stance of taking him ahead of, but yeah, everything that you've said, it really makes sense. And like for me, in the way that I like to build my dynasties and everything, I am more of I want to see what's happened, and then like I lean more on the veteran side than where a lot of dynasty players lean more on the rookie side. Neither side, neither approach is right or wrong or anything. Like it's just how comfortable you feel. So for me, like I hold him a little higher than I do most rookies just because I've seen what he's done with that consistency and I know what he is in the NFL. Whereas some of these rookies, what we think they are right now might not be the case when they are actually in there and the live rounds are flying. But honestly, I still believe that I think his value is going to increase. I really think that a lot of people are going to start getting the fever as we get closer. And I think the biggest thing to that is going into this rookie season right now, unlike since like 2020, like the last few years or whatever, this class, other than Drake May and Caleb Williams, does not have, and Marvin Harrison, doesn't have like that marquee where everybody's excited about, oh my God, I got to have him, where the name recognition, So after the top four, the name recognition kind of drops right now, like at this point of the season. And so I'm thinking like that right
this
there
point,
is,
sure, but
yeah, at this point.
it'll come up.
Yeah, you're right. It'll come up. But I'm thinking like if we're talking about right now, I think right now is where Michael Pittman, I'd like to see what he does with a full season with a competent quarterback play. And I think that Steichen there is an upgrade over Frank Reich.
Big time.
I think that, a season like Jonathan Taylor. Is Jonathan Taylor going to be back next year?
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, with Irsay, who knows?
They already signed him.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They did sign him. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They just went through the whole thing. So a full season of a healthy Jonathan Taylor and all the compliments of that offense, I really think that going into the offseason, a lot of people are going to start looking at that and be like, hey, I'm kind of liking him. So he was a buy for me. But at that price, I understand the hesitation that you're talking about.
I like it. And hello, Rachel. Twitter bestie Chris saying what's up.
Hey, Rachel.
So let's talk about the last person, or I guess I'm not the last person in this class, kind of the biggest name in this class, the guy who's had the most air spent talking about him, and that's T. Higgins. So Chris, tell us a little bit about Mr. T. Higgins.
Okay, so T. Higgins, right now, he is a fourth-year wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was drafted number 33 overall in 2020 by the Bengals. And coming out of Clemson, that team all fresh off the championships and everybody was loving him. Higgins, like he reportedly was offered a contract by the Bengals this offseason, but he declined it, wanting to hit free agency in his age 25 season. Right now, he's in his last year, his fourth year of that 4-year, $8.7 million contract with Cincy. And he's hoping to cash in on that big payday. And honestly, he is more than likely going to get it. He had a solid rookie season, like posting 908 yards on 67 receptions, and then to follow that up, he backed it up with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons alongside, I don't know if you guys may have heard of his running mate, Jamar Chase, and Higgins has 24 total touchdowns in his career, and he has been fairly durable. If you look at what he's done up till this year, he's only missed 2 games. And then this year he's been in and out of the lineup with some nagging injuries, and he actually missed practice today with that hamstring. So questionable to play this weekend. But the biggest draw with Higgins was that he showed that he could be the team's wide receiver one. Now, some people may say that, his rookie year, like he did that with Joe Burrow, like for those 10 games before Burrow got hurt and went out, and then Brandon Allen came in. Some people might be like, well, he wasn't the true one because A.J. Green was there. And doesn't it seem so long ago that A.J. Green was relevant in football? Man.
He was awesome.
He was awesome.
We're going to turn this podcast into old guys talking about dudes. But yeah, A.J. Green was awesome.
He absolutely was. But at the time when he was, alongside Higgins, it was where you really saw the decline in A.J. Green. So he was, I say he was the wide receiver one, like he was doing wide receiver one things. In real life, like Higgins, like he's a desirable wide receiver for many NFL teams. Like he can help out a lot of wide receiver rooms. Like he has sure hands, like he, has a decent route tree. I mean, and he's about his business. You really don't hear a whole lot of, the minutia that T. Higgins has done this or he's feeling this way or whatever. He doesn't have that typical wide receiver diva attitude. He's just out there doing his thing. Even like going into this season when there's questions about can the Bengals keep him or that whole thing about them signing him, everything really wasn't a big thing just because of the way he carries himself. I mean, but he will be desirable. I mean, can you just imagine how much T. Higgins could help the wide receiver core in Kansas City? Like if it was T. Higgins and Rashee Rice, like going into the playoffs right now, I'd feel a hell of a lot better than I do about Marquez Valdez-Scantling or Justin Watson. Scott Moore, he's on IR, but I mean, talking about a disappointment. So there's teams that really can use his talents because he is a talented player. Playing alongside one of the best, he still is out there, doing his thing. So there definitely will be a market for him. I'm just hoping that he doesn't chase the bag and ends up in a worse situation than he is right now. Like I would hate to see him like go to a team as inept as you mentioned earlier before, like the Titans offense right now. It just wouldn't be great for him, I don't think, and definitely not great for us in fantasy football. So right now, DLF has Higgins. They have him valued as a late 24 first. So a little bit late. I mean, less value than Pittman. But however, I mean, like, so this year in 2023, I've been trying to sell Higgins all season just because Higgins is one of those dynasty players that, yes, he has the talent and he is produced on the field, but for some reason, the love for T. Higgins far and above exceeds anything that he has actually done on the field.
Yep.
I mean, it's like, so like the people who love T. Higgins, they act like he has been the number one wide receiver in fantasy for 5 years. When in reality, the best he's ever finished is wide receiver 15, like a mid wide receiver 2, and so I was trying to capitalize on the love affair for T. Higgins to try to, get a little more value than what I perceived him to be worth. So if it comes to if you're going to buy Higgins, it might be a little more difficult than you think. I think right now his stock is going to be pretty low, which would make him a good buy. And I think the reason why it may be low is because we've just finished the season. And after this long season, so many dynasty owners are in a little bit of fatigue mode. They're not thinking about 2024 yet. They're just thinking about, oh man, I'm glad this is over. I either won or I lost my championship. And T. Higgins did not help me. And when they have that attitude and not really thinking, about projecting forward in the future, then you probably could go in there and get a steal if that owner is not about his business. You know what I mean? And if you could do that, that's good. You definitely want to buy players low because if you believe that where he lands, it will probably correlate to more opportunities because he's not playing opposite Jamar Chase, right? And if he has more opportunities, more than likely that will lead to production, and then production leads to fantasy points, and that's what we want. So that is the type of player that you are trying to buy. But as I've mentioned earlier, it might be hard to get them because a lot of people who have them are those people who think that Chase Young is Jerry Rice combined with Randy Moss. And
Chase Young.
I mean,
where did Chase Young come from?
Did I say Chase Young?
Yeah.
Jerry Rice and Randy Moss is the matchup I was trying to. I don't know where Chase Young came from. I guess Jamar Chase Young. Wow. So
usually
Gabe Davis,
I'd give you some leeway there if it's like close, but like you just named a defensive end for the 49ers.
You know what it was? It's leading off the show with Gabe Davis just completely threw me off my game. So when you came with Gabe Davis, kind of like Jay Money said earlier, like it's Gabe Davis's fault.
Damn Gabe Davis.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I don't know how I got there. That's terrible. But, but a lot of these owners, they really think that he is the greatest thing walking, and he has not really done that. So it might be hard to get him. But if you could get him, I mean, he is definitely not a bad player to buy because odds are he will be in a better situation. At least we're hoping. But who knows? Arthur Smith may, make the owner acquire him and then not use him. So we don't know. But it would be lovely it would be lovely to see him in a place with a competent quarterback and a competent offense, and he's not overshadowed by like one of the best talents in the league.
Yeah, that would be nice, but I am of the opinion that T. Higgins is a super number 2.
Okay.
I think he can get paid like a number 1. I think he can go and produce. I don't know how good that is going to be for that NFL team that he signs with.
Okay.
I think it would be good for fantasy football, and that's what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So if he goes to the Panthers and they throw him the ball 200 times a season, like, cool. If he goes to the Giants and Daniel Jones is blindfolded shot putting it to him 250 times a season, great. But you know where I'd rather see him? I'd rather see him as a super number 2 in a place like Dallas or Detroit or Chicago.
Okay.
And I still think he would be very fantasy productive in all of those places.
I agree. I did think about Chicago. Chicago, the only knock that I have for Chicago right now is that I do not have any faith in ownership, and I don't have any faith in the front office like Ryan Poles, and I don't have faith in Eberflus to actually put any offense in a really good spot there.
Why?
Historical data. Like looking at what they've done.
Been around for 2 years. They sold everyone when he took over.
I understand they did. They sold, and then when he comes in and like the things that he does is just it's kind of suspect. The thing that lost me with Poles, like seeing how he's like operated and all this stuff. Like I feel like he could have done better. He's left a lot of things. Some of the trades that he's made have been like kind of bad, and then he's been fleeced a couple of times in some of these trades that he's made. Especially like 30 minutes after he's done it, then another team gets a better player for a lot cheaper. The biggest thing that got me with Poles is when he was like, yeah, leading up to this draft process, I'm locked in, man. I'm at the office. I'm there 60 hours a week. To me, that's not really saying that you're like, going crazy. I would expect you to be 60 hours a week there as a minimum, especially coming into like the draft process. Like this is like, your time to shine. Like I work more than 60 hours, like most weeks with like my whole thing. And I'm not, holding $1 billion franchise in the balance with some of my decisions either, but I'm not a big fan. What he's done has really not impressed me. I think some of the calls that people like tout him for are easy. It's very easy to do the things that he did. It's very easy to trade that pick to the Panthers. It will be very telling to see how he handles this offseason with Justin Fields, whether he's going to ride that out or if he's going to go get one of these rookies. I think it's going to be very telling to see what he does. And honestly, I really feel he's going to fumble it. I honestly do.
Dang. Okay. Wow. That's tough, man.
But, it doesn't work for David Tepper, so he should be better off than that.
We're not getting into that right now. We don't have time for it. So some of these other wide receivers that we were going to talk about that we're just kind of going to mention so you're aware that they are free agents. And Chris, please jump in if you have any nuggets about these guys or anyone you feel strongly about. Tyler Boyd is going to be hitting free agency. Kendrick Bourne will be hitting free agency. Curtis Samuel, Noah Brown, the Texans all-star wide receiver, Noah Brown. Odell Beckham Jr. will be hitting free agency. Darnell Mooney and KJ Osborne. So is there any of those guys that you're really targeting this offseason, Chris?
So Noah Brown, I think, is in a good spot. I really think that the Texans will find a way to keep him just because that wide receiver room has been pretty surprising. And they've actually all been good. Like, so Noah, Nico, Tank, they've been good. And Stroud has a lot to do with that. But I feel like they have a lot to do with Stroud being good as well. Like, I think it just all fits and that synergy is good. I like what they're doing coming from where they were. So I like Noah Brown. Curtis Samuel, I like him only if Ron Rivera stays around and they bring him back in Washington and he keeps that same role that he has. Going other places, not really so much. Darnell Mooney, like I personally believe he's a roster clogger. He will not be on any of my championship teams. And OBJ, yeah, I'm moving on from him at this point also. Like, he's done better than I thought he would in Baltimore. And I really feel like, hey, you know what? Marquise Brown would be better suited in Baltimore right now than he was the day he was drafted if he takes Odell's spot. But other than those guys, I feel like Boyd and Bourne, like they'll be around, they'll be role players. But the ones that really jump off the page to me are Noah Brown and then Curtis Samuel, only in specific situations.
Yeah, and I think hell will freeze over before Ron Rivera is back in Washington.
I hope that's true. I hope that's true.
If that doesn't happen, I don't even know. I just don't know what to say. It's embarrassing for Commanders fans. I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah. I wish him the best. I hope he just decides that retirement is where he wants to be and he's just happy hanging out with his wife and dogs and playing golf, but I hope that he just hangs up the whistle and just for like my football enjoyment, hoping that he's like bowing out from the coaching ranks, unless he wants to go be a DC somewhere.
The most undeserved nickname for a coach ever, Riverboat Ron, who doesn't do anything to take chances. All that said, please follow us on Twitter. You can find me at FF Tyler Heil. You can find Chris at Dynasty Deviant. And you can find our regular host, Stacy Perez, at Stacy_Perez83. Please visit our website, fantasyandframes.com. Subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And make sure you're subscribing to the Fantasy and Frames podcast, because that is our umbrella, which carries Dynasty 365. Fourth and Frames, our Redraft podcast, and Shoot the Gap, our IDP podcast. So please make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. You can continue to throw questions in there. We will get to them and we will answer them. So thank you everyone for sticking around. Thanks for hanging out and good night.